Hey, everybody, welcome to tonight's late night happy hour. Brian Kamenetzky and Andy Kamenetzky, joined by the athletic Bill Oram, which I believe is not a statement of his place of work or his employer, but a statement of fact. He is quite an athlete. Bill, from the Athletic, how are you, Bill?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys. You're thrilled to be able to discuss my athletic prowess on this platform. I know you guys have a lot of other athletes on it.
Bill, at your height of athleticism,
the peak of your powers, Bill.
Right, that would lead to this power, or I should say, this description. Not that any of us needed it. What was your sport? What was your game? Your specialty? What were your heights?
Well, so we've got a basketball hoop on the garage that I was able to install during the pandemic, and when I lower it down to 7.5 feet, I'm able to hold up the 15-month-old baby, and he dunks.
Nice.
It's probably my greatest contribution to sports so far.
What about though in your prime? You know, prime Bill Oram.
We're not there yet. We're not there. I mean, listen, the sky's the limit. I'm taking it one day at a time just to get there. But when we get there, I'm going to let you guys know. You're going to be my first. You're going to be my first interview. I played basketball.
You'll grant us an interview, is what you're saying.
What was that?
You'll grant us the interview, is what you're saying, when you get to that. Yes. those heights. So you're like a Montana person. So like, are you consider like fly fishing, like A River Runs Through It is a sports movie for you?
We've had this debate before, guys, but yes, I fully believe that A River Runs Through It qualifies as a sports movie. And I think it was criminally underranked on the Athletics 100 greatest sports movies list, like years ago at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, when that was a project we did. I think it came in at like 80th or something like that, which is just a travesty. If you are going to accept the premise that A River Runs Through It is a sports movie, it's much higher on that list.
Well, that's an interesting question because, I mean, both Brian and I are really big fans of A River Runs Through It. I mean, I remember I saw it in the theaters when I was in college. It blew my mind how great it was, and, you know, Redford's direction and the cinematography and the acting and all of that. And I consider fishing to be a skill. Like, it's a really difficult skill. And, you know, Brian and I actually wrote an article for ESPN the magazine about a guy who's considered the Dennis Rodman of professional bass fishing, Mike Iaconelli, and we ended up writing his autobiography.
He was a real rod man.
This is great, by the way. This is great because later in the show we are going to be doing a game with Bill involving puns, sort of. Explain that coming up later on. But like Brian and I learned a lot about fishing doing this book, and like, you know, everything that goes into really competitive fishing and like the art of it. And it is one hell of a skill. I'm not 100% sure I consider it a sport. And because I'm not 100% sure I consider it a sport, there does seem to be sort of a peak, you know, like a ceiling to how high you can rank it on a list of sports movies.
I'm fine. I'm fine with that argument. I think it kind of depends on how liberal you're willing to be with the definition of sport. Because like if you limit sports to team sports or things you can play in high school, you know, like if you grew up in the country, like I did, you know, they're like hunting, fishing, archery. These are all sports. These are all sports and things that you like because there is a competition, there is a pursuit.
They're sporting, but here's my biggest question, because I'm a little more. Like, it's obviously competitive. Like, it is definitely competitive with the fishing and the people against each other and the boats and the things. And I'll deliver my take on whether or not A River Runs Through It's a sports movie in a second. But my big question about fishing or hunting or any of these other things is, can it be a sport if like half of the equation doesn't know it's playing?
I mean, I felt
the fish is not in on it. The bear is not in on it. The deer, they don't know. Like, that doesn't seem fair to me. If half of the equation isn't aware that they're even playing, I don't know how it can technically be a sport. That said, A River Runs Through It is not a sports movie. Not even close.
All right.
It's a movie maybe that has a sport in it.
Well, it raises though the really interesting question though of just like, where do you separate the line between competition and sports? Because like, I mean, if you really made it all about a competitive setting, for example, like Jeopardy would be a sport. Like you've got 3 panelists in front of their buzzers competing against each other. It's obviously not athletic on any level. Like that might be the lowest in terms of, yeah, you got to have a really strong, quick thumb. That's about it. Like, so you start at like Jeopardy and then you move up to video games. Like, like where's the cutoff between things that are legitimately competitive, legitimate skill, and I guess could be on ESPN?
Well, I don't know how ESPN got into the poker business. Like that's one of the greatest cons of all time. And listen, I love watching poker on TV. I have zero issue with it being on ESPN. But like, and listen, it's entertainment and sports programming, right? Isn't that like, so I mean, like I'm fine with it, but it's like, did we just accept at some point that playing is pinochle a sport?
Poker is, sure.
Like if you could sit a bunch of people around and watch them play, and it was interesting, I guess it could be, but I don't think poker's a sport.
Well, I agree. The fact that it has found its way onto ESPN when it is probably the least sport thing.
I will say this: fishing, I think, ranks higher than poker in terms of sports. I mean, like if nothing else, there's more motion in fishing. like I mean, you are more likely to have an injury fishing than you are playing cards. Like I've sat at a poker table for an hour, nothing ever hurts other than maybe your wallet. That's it.
Ego. Yeah.
Ego. Yes. But I mean, that's pretty much.
I don't think poker's a sport. I think fishing is probably, fishing I can consider a sport. Although again, I have my reservation. It's really just the argument about whether or not that what's a sport versus what's a sports movie is a whole other rabbit hole. I don't know if we should jump into now.
I think it's too late.
It's a long hour.
I think we're in.
I think before we jump in, I think
were you a
Brad Pitt like chasing the fish into the river at this point?
Now that actually, I will say this, that scene, and for people who haven't seen it, Brad Pitt hooks a really big fish and he ends up in the middle of the river and this fish is pulling him and he's basically getting pulled downstream, going through all the rocks, having difficulty maintaining his balance, but he eventually lands the thing. Like, and there was some athleticism involved with Brad Pitt's character in that scene just to stay alive. And, to both keep the fish and not really get injured. So I guess in that sense, there was a bit of sportsiness in A River Runs Through. Like,
in that sense, Andy, every James Bond movie is a sports movie too, because that involves a ton of athleticism just to stay alive.
I would say that A River Runs Through It was more of a sports movie than some other fishing movies like Jaws or Grumpier Old Men.
Grumpier old. Now, ice fishing's not. Can we agree on this? At least ice fishing's not a sport.
I'll tell you what, though. I have a sports tangential.
Did you just refer to Jaws as a fishing movie?
You want to argue?
Okay, I'm putting out a poll. I'm putting out a poll right now. Movie? Yes, I'm going to put out a poll right now.
I mean, I don't think it's. I mean, it's more of a hunting movie. I guess it is. You're hunting down the shark, but I don't know if it would be classically defined as a fishing movie. But it's an interesting observation.
So you asked about ice fishing, and I have a quick story. So in college, I went ice fishing once. I went to the University of Montana in Western Montana, and we went. Me and some buddies went ice fishing on Swan Lake, which is like an hour from Missoula, not the Tchaikovsky ballet, but and we get the auger and we drop our lines. We've got the beer in the ice hole to keep it cold. We catch nothing.
Hey, language.
We invented a game. Where you would like progressively move farther back from a hole, and you had to throw a full beer on the ice and skid it into the hole. It entertained us for hours, and I'm dying that I can't remember the name of it. It was like something like, we called it like ice ball or something like that. And the joke was that there was no ball. It was just a beer can. But
good joke.
But one of the twists was you had to like be shirtless on this frozen lake to play. Like that was the cost of entry. So it was like these four fat college dudes. Yes, Transformers is a romantic comedy. Trying to throw beers in an ice hole.
Were were you one of the fat guys? Were you a fat guy in college?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've maintained. I feel like you don't want to see me play ice hole ball right now.
I don't. No, I don't consider you a fat guy. Like I don't. I've never thought of you as that.
Something that happened to all of us, Bill. You're a little younger.
Swan Lake was not the hole that most of the beer in college went into. My mouth.
All right.
No, I was trying to pair that. I was trying to pair that with the ice hole joke.
Hey, Lang Whitaker. We all know Lang covers. He covers. What would you say? The Grizzlies video game team? Like, is that what he covered this year? Because I know he's connected to the Memphis Grizzlies, but I thought he was involved with the coverage of their gaming team, among other things. But anyway, Lang Whitaker weighed in, and he said that
he's the GM, Andy. He's the GM.
He's the GM of the Grizzlies.
Not of the Grizzlies, of their gaming.
Okay. Coach GM of Grizz Gaming for the Memphis Grizzlies, but he weighed in that Jaws is actually a fishing movie. So there you have it.
And I love when people do that because it lets us know that they're awake, and so that when we come to them and say, "Hey, do you want to be on our show?" and they're like, "Sorry, I'm 2 hours ahead of you. I can't." And you're like, "Well, you were up 2 days ago, so what's the problem?"
Have you ever had anybody on this show who just like has their phone like in bed and you can just see like sort of like the moon glinting off their forehead and that's how they participate in the late night happy hour?
Yes.
No, we pretty much have everybody out of bed. I mean, not that we demand it. I mean, if that's where you want to do the show, John Ireland did a show from his hot tub. Ramona Shelburne did a show from an elliptical. She rode the elliptical for the entire hour she was on the show. She got in her workout at like 10 at night, which was commendable. So there's not a no bed requirement. We just haven't had that yet. We're down. Bill, if you need to get in bed,
I'm good.
By the way, Lakers guy says rocking the 90s stash though. What's the story with the stash?
We call that the Gordon Hayward now, by the way.
Gordon has the soul patch too, so it's not quite the same. But
we may have lost Brian momentarily. But anyway, what led to that? Because you had a full beard going for a while. You had a lot.
The beard was pretty unruly. I had a vow that I wasn't going to shave the beard until. I think it was like either there was basketball again or the season was officially ruled over. And then when we got back to the bubble, my wife was pretty adamant that beard needed to go, and she was pro mustache. And so, she's sort of been my grooming stylist over this. She was the one who shaved my head at the beginning of the pandemic 6 months ago. And which Brian obviously remembers very well because I FaceTimed him from my bathroom as I was trying to figure out how to bick my head because I didn't understand like really kind of the mechanics of getting the back. So Brian talked me through that. That was like 3 haircuts ago. And then so then she got the clippers out and she took it down to the mustache, and it is the current pandemic look. Subject to change though.
I just think I'm very pleased with it. I'm just trying to fix my microphone. You guys carry on.
I actually like the new hairstyle, Bill. I have not seen this look in a while. I actually really like it. I mean, because again, you've been experimenting throughout the pandemic because it's what all of us with options do. Some of us have kept it exactly the same because we really have no other choice. But those with options, I know back when I had hair and plentiful hair, I would have been doing that sort of stuff too. So, but I like
your old driver's license photo handy by any chance?
No, but I do have. Where is it? This photo, which from back in the day. Yes, this was me around age 25 or so. Back in my truly long-haired days. I mean that by the way doesn't even really show how long the hair was because my friend Anna actually curled my hair before that photo. It was long and she wanted to see what it looked like curled. And I said, yeah, do whatever you want. So it actually was longer than that if it didn't have the curls, Bill.
I mean, it's very convincing. I mean, believe that you were, like, I don't know, the last guy cut from Pearl Jam or something.
Here's the thing. This is how convincing, like the hair and like, the little necklace with the little pendant, like how much that can go a long way. I was an awful bassist. Like I was terrible. But in that photo, I look legit. Like I look like the real deal in that thing.
Like if that was your Tinder photo in 1992.
A lot of ladies wiping right. Or fellas too. It's 2020, no judgment. But I looked good. There's no way around it. Brian, are you there?
I've been here. I've been listening to this whole thing. I was just fixing my microphone.
Leif Garrett, is that you, Lakers guy?
I didn't. You were on such a. He brings that photo out. He's a little like Michael Thompson with his fishing photo. He brings that picture out, Bill. Once every 2 or 3 shows, just to remind people what things used to be. And that's cool. I get it. I understand. You're talking about pandemic haircuts. I've actually made some very subtle changes to my look during the pandemic.
Extremely subtle.
Very subtle. You have to look very closely. But enthusiasts of the late night happy hour probably can see them and know what they are. Just saying.
Those who followed us for the entire pandemic, they've seen the progression.
They have. They've seen, again, the subtle evolution. I tell you what hasn't evolved is my background. I still have not mastered the rate my room style backgrounds that everybody should be doing during this whole thing. So, all right. We've got a game coming up in a little bit that's all punny in honor of Bill, because Bill is the official pun person, pun master, self-appointed of the sports writing world, I would say.
I mean, that's really high praise. I think there's a lot of competition for that, I think.
Well, I mean, you have to walk backwards out of every room, otherwise Wakey will kill you. But that's different.
Like, who do you consider your chief nemesis when it comes to the world of media and puns?
There was one the other day where one of our social media people at The Athletic tweeted a pun, and the NBA editor at The Athletic, Sergio Gonzalez, tweeted, "Was this you, Zach Harper?" And I was just like,
yeah, he does a lot of that.
I'm right here. I'm on the same platform. So that would hurt me a little bit.
Well, Zach's pretty good. I mean, if you're going to get compared,
Zach's very good.
They're worse.
I actually think Fred Katz might be the best.
He is pretty good.
Fred Katz covers the Nets, correct? For The Athletic.
Covers, what was that?
Covers Brooklyn, correct? For The Athletic.
Covers the Washington Wizards. And he's the one who, like 2 years ago, coined that if the young center for the Miami Heat ever wrote a book about told his life story, it'd be an autobiography. And it was so good. It was so good. Like 2 years later, when the Heat were playing the Lakers, and I'm trying to think of puns based on players' names, autobiography came into my head, and I was like, wait a minute, did Fred Katz already do this? And I had to Google it, and of course, Fred was 2 years ahead of me on the pun. So credit where it's due. I mean, he's currently the best, the king.
All right, so Bill, you wrote a piece about last night's win, the huge win by the Lakers, and Anthony Davis, his game winner, and something you said that I thought was really interesting, and I'm paraphrasing, but that, here's actually the piece. I will read it now verbatim. Just like that, Anthony Davis has his spot in Lakers history. No matter what else is to come in his Lakers career, he has taken up permanent residence alongside the other makers of the celebrated franchise most iconic postseason shots: Jerry West, Robert Horry, Derek Fisher, and of course Kobe Bryant, whose name Davis bellowed as he sprinted into the joyous mass of teammates that cascaded onto the court inside the Orlando bubble. I thought that was interesting, Bill, just the idea that no matter what happens for the rest of these playoffs, Anthony Davis already has that moment cemented. Mm-hmm. And as Mohizi points out, very good piece. People can check it out at The Athletic. Do you think he's already there with that shot if they haven't won a championship yet? Like if they end up going to the finals and they lose, is it still the same for Anthony Davis?
I think it is. I think it's there. I think it's in that that category. And I said it somewhere that it's kind of like the big shot wing of the Lakers Hall of Fame. The shot's still there. To me, it just becomes a matter of of what it ultimately ends up representing. And we don't quite know, because we don't know what Anthony Davis's Lakers career looks like. If this is sort of the first signature moment of 10 years, and 4 MVP awards and 3 whatever championships, and this is sort of the dawn of it, it takes on even more meaning. If they win a title, obviously it means more. But I've had conversations with people today, people who disagree with the assertion, people who agreed with it. But Robert Horry hits that shot against the Kings. That was to keep hopes of a three-peat alive. I mean, there was a lot at stake. There was more at stake with that even than there was last night, obviously. But Derek Fisher's shot was in a 2-2 series in the second round, a year the Lakers didn't even win the championship. So, I mean, I think that there's room for these moments that end up having huge meaning in different ways. It doesn't just have to be because it, preserved a dynasty. To me, if you look at Anthony Davis, all it took to get him here, the fact that he's carrying this weight for LeBron James, LeBron wanted him here. It was on a night that, Kobe Bryant sort of reemerged into the dialogue with the game. It was a very heavy, emotional sort of shot. And to me, that did the heavy lifting of why it mattered. And that shot to me still has life. Like, what it means is still evolving. It won them a game 2. If they somehow were to lose this series, I think it would lose a lot of meaning. But you go up 2-0 on a team you should have beaten anyway. I don't think anyone in this conversation thinks they're going to lose this series now. And the Lakers are and should be a pretty heavy favorite to win the championship at this point. And that shot, is really kind of the signature moment of this postseason run so far. If you look at what's happened in the bubble, it's been great buzzer beaters and great back and forth games and these incredible March Madness style battles. At least in the playoffs, the Lakers haven't had those. They haven't had that moment. The Lakers playoff run has actually been pretty boring. I mean, they've been beating teams by 10, 8, 15. LeBron and AD have been incredible. There hasn't been a lot of drama in the playoffs. And even in the run up to the playoffs, there was one great game, and it was Kuzma's game winner against the Nuggets.
Right, against the Nuggets third stringers.
Right, over Bol, right? Bol, who notably was not Jesus Christ. And like, to me, it was the first time that it felt like the Lakers really had kind of that bubble moment that so many other teams have had too. And the fact that it's happening far away, just always, I don't know. I mean, that shot to me was just, and maybe it's just because I've watched so much terrible basketball over the last 7 years, but like that shot to me was like this sort of aha moment breakthrough for the organization, and certainly an ascendancy for Anthony Davis.
I just, the part that you mentioned that's interesting here is that it's still evolving. It's still active. Like Andy said, like if they lose this series or they lose in the finals, obviously where this fits is different. Although the Lakers didn't win a title when Fish hit .4. I mean, it just becomes part of the lore. It was such an amazing shot. But I think what's different about this now is, again, you mentioned it. We talked about it last night after the game. The Lakers aren't just like favorites at this point to win a title. They are heavy favorites to win a title. Like if they don't win one now, it's bad, like bad things. So I think the context now of Davis hitting that shot, of what the Lakers look like going forward, of how he plays, gets even more significant because he asked for this for the heat, the Ferris Bueller style heat, and he's getting it, and he's responded in incredible ways. But now if he pulls sort of a Paul George in the finals, assuming the Lakers get through and they lose to a team that everyone thinks they should beat, it gets that much worse. So like the pressure doesn't,
like what happened with Powell in 2008.
Yeah, the pressure doesn't come off AD in the slightest after this, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that as he has kind of established himself even more as the guy who is willing to take that shot and can take that shot, that pressure only ramps up. And I think, the pressure never came off Kobe, right? Like, I mean, Kobe never that pressure was always still there, even though he was, the greatest. I think the thing that shot kind of did for me was it kind of put to rest this idea that there was still something Anthony Davis hadn't done. which is win. And I know he still hasn't won a championship. I'm not saying it's the same as win a championship, but like it was, throughout the years, like, well, Anthony Davis has never been part of a deep playoff run. He's never come up big for his team in the playoffs. And he has now, what have they played? They've played a dozen playoff games. Anthony Davis has come up big for this Lakers team. Like, he has
been terrific.
To me, just dusted off any last criticism that he had an incomplete portfolio. Because he is now a playoff performer, and he's performed to a higher level in the postseason than Paul George. He could have a bad finals, let's say. I mean, that is certainly plausible, but he has been an MVP caliber player every step of the way throughout these playoffs. And one thing I did say last night was, this is LeBron's team. There's no question this is LeBron's team. Even as LeBron diminishes as a player, his presence will still keep him as the alpha of the team. But we're all watching this thinking there's like a gradual handoff of the proverbial torch from LeBron to AD. But like, I'm watching these playoffs and I'm starting to think, like, is AD just like taking it?
Well, here's what's interesting about that.
Good question.
That's a really interesting question, by the way. Like the idea of taking it versus it, being handed over versus, I guess, sort of like a soft opening of the handing of the torch. When we covered, the last 10 years of Kobe's career, and there was always that question of next franchise face and like who was going to be taking that baton, and there was that year it was supposed to be Dwight, and the two of them never got on even remotely the same page that season, and there you would hear some people talk about how Dwight needs to just assert himself and demand that Kobe hand that torch, like treating it as if this was an actual torch as opposed to a metaphorical torch. And like the two of them would go to a notary and like sign it over, and it would officially become Dwight Howard's torch. And it was like, look, man, Kobe's not giving up that torch until he's good and damn ready, which is another way of saying retired. Like it doesn't matter who's on this team. And, Dwight wasn't, I think, ready to get that torch, but it speaks to, though, the awkwardness of the setup the Lakers were trying to create, because they were looking to sign Dwight to a long-term deal in his prime, where he would be like the sort of franchise face and, potentially the most effective or best player on that team, with Kobe in relative decline. Pre-Achilles, Kobe was still a great player, but you were starting to see the signs of the decline in the same way.
34 years old. Yeah.
Right. You see certain signs of it with LeBron, as great as LeBron is. There are ways where you see that he's not, 2012 Miami Heat LeBron. But Dwight was never going to be in that position of being the guy he was signed to be as long as Kobe was there, because it was always going to be Kobe's team, and Kobe earned that. Like you weren't going to ultimately take that from Kobe unless that's what he wanted. And if this is happening now with LeBron and Anthony Davis, it is because LeBron is ultimately allowing it to happen. Like he's okay with it. Like
LeBron's always been a guy but in the possession before, he, met the double team or whatever it was at the rim, and he kicked it out, and the ball ended up in Caruso's hands to take a shot. LeBron has always been the guy. The criticism of LeBron so much in his earlier in his career, he passed to Donyell Marshall. Like, I think,
but I'm not even talking so much about giving up a final shot as it is like the idea of the perception of whose team it is, or like
I'm talking about the same thing too. I mean like this idea of, passing off some of that stuff. And I also think too, like, LeBron understands, and I think Nathan Mark pointed out here, like Davis can be a better player and LeBron can be more important, like points that out on the chat. Like LeBron is the glue in the engine that makes the team work, but he is plenty of ego, all that kind of stuff. Yes. But he's also much more of an accommodating and egalitarian player, and in that sense. So I think the last shot thing is connected to the whose team thing or whatever to some degree, because LeBron has always been the guy who will quote unquote make the correct play. And so I see them almost in a lot of ways, because of who they are, as two sides of the same coin.
So I think I think the shot is a great metaphor for what we're talking about, but I don't think it's a great I don't think it's a great piece of evidence of it. I think that it really fits narratively, and it kind of is a great entry point into the conversation, but I don't actually think it is like a supporting piece of evidence to the conversation. Right. But I would go back just to last summer. I mean, LeBron has something that a lot of superstars don't have, which is great self-awareness of what he actually needs to kind of complete his story, or to be less vague, to win with the Lakers. He understood that there needed to be another star. There needed to be this particular star. They needed Anthony Davis, and so when Anthony Davis comes in and he's got a year left on his contract, LeBron does literally everything he could do to make AD the guy, where he talks about how the offense needs to go through Anthony Davis, and it'd be crazy if the offense didn't go through Anthony Davis. Oh, hey, Anthony Davis wears number 23 also, the most iconic number in basketball. I'm going to take that off my back and give it to you, Anthony Davis. So, I mean, I think like what we're talking about, like what Kobe could have never done with Dwight, and Kobe couldn't have really done with anybody. I don't think, like, if Melo had signed with the Lakers in 14, if LaMarcus had come in 15, if KD had given him a meeting in 6, I don't know, I'm probably a year off.
It was around the same time.
Like, in these successive years where the Lakers were big game hunting, to bring that back to our earlier references, and always striking out, is because Kobe, as great as he was, and for all of his greatness, that was one thing that, like, he was never going to be welcoming in that same way. And LeBron understood, in order for this to work, in order to kind of get the Lakers on the right track and to pull them out of the tailspin they were in as of May of last year, there were going to need to be some concessions and like some elder statesman type actions on his part. And so what we're talking about now, about him like being a willing torch passer, has been embodied in everything he was doing from when he first started, actively recruiting AD to the Lakers in December of 2018.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes sense. LeBron has gone, like you said, out of his way to make sure that Anthony Davis understands his importance on this team, and understands that, he has an equal say, even if he does not have equal stature as LeBron, because there's nobody in the league who has equal stature to LeBron. He has as important a voice on this team, and as important, a presence, as important an urgency on this team as anybody can have, standing next to LeBron. I mean, again, your stature won't meet LeBron, because LeBron is going to go down at worst as like the second best player ever, third maybe, depending on if you think Kareem's getting overlooked. That's it.
I want to check you on what you just said, because like that is insane. And like I just, as people who've been in this business for a while, like the fact that like this is a dude we cover and that we're around on a daily basis, that like we're just like brushing off, oh, he's better than Bill Russell, he's better than Kareem, he's better than that. Like this, I just want to like put us in reality for a moment, that this is like something we do for a living.
It's like covering Gretzky as the Oilers beat writer. It's like all of these things. It's staggering, and I'm glad we got this year.
Oh, God.
Because I mean, you understand in terms of LeBron's performance, there are other things I'm less glad about. But the quality of the performance this year was last year.
What's not to like, Brian?
Murder hornets. Last year was not a good representation of what LeBron was and what the LeBron experience could be, and just a perfect. He was really good, 28, 8, and 8. I think he averaged last year. That doesn't suck. But like this year, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Like I understand what this thing is. And you see the guy who is, like you say, Bill, one of the 2 or 3 best players to ever do this thing that we all really enjoy watching. And it gets to a little, it's part of what this team makes this team so much fun, for me at least, to watch and to cover, because it's a lot of positive stories. It's a lot of, the Kobe story is obviously a horrendous one and the worst that you can get, but some of the responses that have come from it, there have been some very moving stories that have been the result of it. And my favorite thing about AD is that he's performing, is that it isn't a story about a guy who didn't quite come up, which is an easy story to write and makes for great sports radio and all that, but he's actually killing it. LeBron is doing playoff LeBron 17 years into the league. Like, these are great, positive, fun, kind of fulfilling stories in sports when you almost never get that.
Well, and especially,
and they really like each other.
Well, especially after the last half dozen the Lakers, I think I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of came just to expect the worst out of everything. So it's like, you come into this year and it's like, oh, Anthony Davis has a year left on his contract. We've seen this before with Dwight. Like, I'm not counting those chickens. And this is the year where it's like, after everything went wrong every other season with injuries and chemistry and front office type stuff, the Lakers have not been, they've not been drama. There has not been front office stuff. There's been complete, symbiosis between the front office, the coaching staff, the players. No LeVar Ball, yes. I mean, it's such a calm year.
No team attached to LeVar Ball has ever made the playoffs. Think about it. No team.
Yeah, even LeVar Ball. I don't think LaMelo's Australian team won any games.
No. Didn't LaMelo buy the team he was playing on?
Yes, he did. He did.
Yes, he did.
Kind of a baller move.
Didn't go to the playoffs. It is a baller move. And look, I mean, he's, LaMelo is going to be a top 5 pick and hopefully he succeeds. Hopefully Lonzo can pull together all of his highest potential, because I liked him when we covered him, and I had a lot of empathy for things he was going through. And I don't think for a lot of his life he was really allowed to be the person that he is, like to really discover who he is as a person. And, even as a basketball player, I don't think he was really allowed to be who he was as a basketball player. And I think this distance, this literal distance from his family is very beneficial. Or by his family, I really mean his dad. I think that is going to be, Lonzo's talked about it. I think it's going to be really, really good for him. And I'm happy for him that it's happening.
The thing I always said, even before Lonzo was drafted, was that the best thing that could have probably happened for him was if he got drafted by Milwaukee. And this was before Milwaukee was juggernaut Milwaukee. And so it's you could still think of Milwaukee as this basketball outpost, but LeVar wasn't going to be in Milwaukee 41 times a year. And I think that you're finally seeing that in New Orleans. But, a lot of things happened. I mean, that first year with Lonzo, it was unthinkable that he would actually kind of distance himself from Big Baller Brand and the family empire, or whatever you want to call it. But then, he becomes a father, has his daughter. Things don't go great right away with the Lakers. And it's you could see him kind of trying to kind of break out as more of an individual. And as that was happening, and again, you're talking about a 19, 20-year-old kid. This is when people are becoming individuals anyway. And it's kind of remains to be seen how that's all going to come together for him as a player. But I think it's just so critical for him to have any shot at all.
I just think this is going to be one of these stories that I think in 2 or 3 or 4 years, you kind of look, that happens in sports every once in a while. You just go back, that was really goddamn weird. That was a weird story and a weird moment. And as much as time as we spent talking about it and I'm not saying we ignored it. I don't even know if we could appreciate in the moment how absolutely goddamn strange that whole thing was. And
do you remember when the Lakers were on a 9-game losing streak in January of that first year? There's 9 or 10 games.
You're going to have to be more specific, Bill.
Bill, we did post-game shows for 7 years of 9-game losing streaks.
Lonzo's rookie year, the Lakers were on this huge.
Still going to have to be more specific.
LeVar was in Lithuania, and this is when he says they need a new coach.
Oh yeah, yes.
There was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of pressure all of a sudden to fire Luke Walton, and there were people within the organization who thought that there was that something could actually happen, because they were losing all these games they shouldn't have been losing. They were deep in this losing streak, and And,
and also the president of basketball operations at the time wanted to fire Luke Walton.
Anyway, right? Already had it out for him. But the fact that and listen, it didn't work out with Luke, whatever. But the fact that like the dad of the rookie point guard could be spouting off from the from Lithuania, the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, nearly fired, is just wild.
It's bonkers. Do you remember when? And that was we all had to show up at the shoot around the next day. But like we were all the shoot around the next day, just waiting for Luke to finish up so we could ask him about LeVar Ball, asking him questions from taking shots at him from Lithuania. Like we all had to show up and ask questions. Right? What?
Shoot around at Staples Center, right? Yeah, that day. Yeah, I remember like Lonzo came over, and that was when Lonzo had kind of a famous line where he was like, "Oh, we said like, do you want to play for Luke?" And he said, "I'll play for anybody."
Right, exactly.
Carry Andrew Bynum. There's a bank in every city.
Exactly. I mean, just like
famous quote.
We talked about this last night on our post game. Andy and I really miss Andrew Bynum.
Oh God, he was. I will always have a soft spot for that kid. I mean, by the time he was shipped out, as we discussed yesterday, it had run its course with the Lakers. I think everybody was ready to move on from Andrew Bynum. But that being said, we both actually really liked him, really got along with him, and found him endlessly entertaining, sometimes not even intentionally. But he just, that guy was just a walking 7-foot quote. He never stopped giving us great stuff, much to the chagrin of John Black.
I am not entirely sure that he truly loved basketball in the same way that a lot of these guys do.
Here's the thing with Bynum. Bynum was actually really competitive, but I don't know how much he loved basketball.
Correct. I think he got competitive over people telling me he wasn't very good or he couldn't do stuff or whatever. But that's different.
Okay, well, this is actually, I mean, because we're talking about this with Bynum, and like Bynum, for example, in that 2010 series, dragged himself through it like on one leg. I remember I asked him, "Could you play a game 8?" And he said no, like a theoretical one. But this with Lonzo from the Nathan Mark, Lonzo looks like he's been forced to play basketball his whole life, just doesn't care about it. I don't know if I think he doesn't care about basketball, but I do agree that Lonzo plays like a guy who's been programmed to play basketball a certain way, and to sort of present Lonzo Ball, the basketball player, and the ethos as this pre-programmed thing.
Well, because the guy who was supposed to talk is LeVar, not Lonzo. The guy who's supposed to have the personality is LeVar, not Lonzo. Lonzo can have an on-court personality, but even his on-court personality and his style is supposed to be an extension and a validation of LeVar. And so I think that's where that comes from.
He's kind of like a Mortal Kombat character for basketball. Like his name is Lonzo Ball. The whole thing just like always like felt so forced to me. Like, that the Ball family had these 3, it always just felt so forced, even though, I mean, I'm not disputing their family surname, but it was always just a, I don't know. And the fact that, that it was the Lakers just always, it felt like a match made in the opposite of heaven.
If we found out one day that like when Lonzo was maybe 5 and LaMelo was in diapers or whatever, that LeVar changed their name from like Smith to Ball, it wouldn't be shocking.
It's like LeVar Bolanowitz or something.
I knew he looked familiar from Hebrew school. I just couldn't couldn't peg it.
It really wouldn't be shocking. Like if we really learned that the last name was never actually Ball, but like this was all part of the gimmick. Like, I mean, would it be shocking?
I mean, I don't even remember what arena it is, but it's like the announcer like announces the visiting team's like baskets, like Basket McGee, that, and he would say basketball without kind of the indication that he was in on the joke. And I laughed so hard every single time. Basketball sure is.
Just it's very similar to whenever Oklahoma City plays Denver, and on the ticker on the scoreboard, whatever, it just says Thunder Nuggets. It always makes me giggle. Just can't help myself because I am a child. But yeah, so I get it. But basketball makes it sound like it's basketball from the aughts, when you used to put a space between those sorts of letters. So what happens here now with the Lakers? Because I just feel like once the Clippers were eliminated, once the Bucks were eliminated, Nathan Mark is another good one. When Chicago plays Denver, Bull Nuggets. Really, this works with any of the animal teams. I think
the Bulls are the best because they are like they play up their pun potential. So the Bulls, like, their game notes are not just like Bulls game notes. You get it, and you're holding your hand at the top. It says Bulls sheet.
Really?
I mean,
they're working blue over there. I didn't realize that.
Chicago.
I like that. But like, what? So I was saying, like, what happens? Because the entire context of the playoffs changed when the Clippers were eliminated, when the Bucks were eliminated, and while I understand you're here, but based on, you've been around the team all year, what's your sense of, like, do you feel they understand the shift in what this thing is now, or do you just think that they maybe assume that they were supposed to win it the entire time?
I mean, I think probably a little bit of both, and to me, there has been such a business-like approach from this Lakers team ever since they got to the bubble, way more so than the Clippers. It wasn't that
Lemon Pepper Flats wasn't business-like for you, Bill?
I have so many thoughts on Magic City, guys, but what?
Have you been?
Oh, no. I've thoughts on Lou Williams and Magic City, but
okay.
No, I've not been. But now I have a great professional reason to go the next time I'm in Atlanta. So I'll get back to you on the late night happy hour sometime in 2023. But the Lakers, to me, just like, there was always kind of this feeling I had, like, and Sam Amick has written about this as well, that, like, there are many reasons for the league to resume, but there is also and again, this is not a reason to. It's not a reason to have to force the end of a season at the end of a pandemic. But I think also the league does, or not at the end, but in a pandemic, I think the league also, like, values having LeBron, have the opportunity to pursue a championship. It's an all-time great. You have and win, lose, whatever. But, like, at least let an all-time great find a way to, like, have a chance at a championship. And so to me, I think that this opportunity, in a lot of ways, always meant more to the Lakers, because you have a lot of veteran guys, because these guys do feel, I think, the pressure of trying to win for and with LeBron, who is 35 years old, 17th year, all of that. Some of these guys were around last year and saw how these things could unravel quickly. I think there was almost a gratitude with this Lakers team that the season was resuming and that there was a chance to kind of finish what they'd started. And I don't know if the China trip and Kobe's death necessarily kind of hardened this team to be able to withstand sort of challenges. I don't know if that's how real that is, but I do think that there is something to be said for the togetherness of this team, that there was real chemistry built through adversity. And so by the time there was 4 months apart and then they're coming together, now you have to be away from your family. I do think that there was, like, a real, like, well, if we're going to do this, then we need to be locked in. We need to be taking it seriously. And they have. I mean, they were not good in the seeding games. And, depending on how much you bought into their shooting struggles and things like that, you were worried or saw them as more vulnerable than before. I mean, I think I wrote a bunch of times that they seem more vulnerable than they did on March 10th. But I mean, now 12 games into the postseason, this team is a locked in juggernaut. And so to me, I mean, yes, prohibitive favorite to win a championship.
Well, I think the good thing is you've got a lot of guys on this team who literally know what is involved with winning the whole thing. And I mean, LeBron has done it 3 times. Danny Green has done it twice. JaVale McGee's been on 2 championship teams. Rondo, to whatever degree Quinn Cook. I was going to say, I mean, he doesn't play much, but
you also have guys who know how hard it is. And I thought this was a great question for Dwight Howard the other day, because he went to the finals in 2009 and he hasn't been back. And so this is a guy who truly understands all that goes into getting your body ready into being on top teams. Those Houston teams were supposed to be better than they were, and not getting there. And so the opportunity is elusive. It's not just the guys who have won. Some of these veteran guys like Jared Dudley, who everybody talks about as maybe the most important guy in that locker room. All he's been through in the Western Conference Finals battles that he had, against the Lakers, for him to have the opportunity to be part of that. I mean, there's a seriousness to this Lakers team and a maturity that I don't think exists anywhere else in the league.
Yeah, they've been extremely locked in this whole year. I mean, they've been this really
compare
great.
To the Clippers, Andy,
Yeah, I mean, they've been this great combination all year of really, really focused, and everybody takes their job and their specific role really seriously, tries to follow it, to the letter. But they're also a lot of fun. They are one of the most likable teams I've covered in a long time. And I've compared them a lot to the 2009 team. Just there's certain things that remind me about of that team, except one stark difference. That team was so fucking intense because they were coming off that 2008 finals where they just got their asses handed to them in that Game 6 loss, 39 points. They were just emasculated and humiliated. And that group, which came back almost entirely intact, they carried that through the whole season. And it was a really intense team to cover. The guys were all professional. They weren't unpleasant to be around.
There wasn't what it was this year. There are jokes, and one guy comes in, AD is doing his interview, and LeBron makes a joke from across the room, or Dwight yells something, or whatever. You
didn't have that.
You didn't have that.
Yeah, they and this group, and I think it's unusual to see that, just that type of really dialed in professionalism with a lightness, that springs up the minute the game is over. And and it comes out a lot in the locker room because they happen to be winning a lot. But I mean, they've been, you can speak to this, Bill. I think they've been a real pleasure to cover.
Yeah, I mean, they have great. I mean, they have. This is a team with a lot of really good guys, a lot of really professional players, a lot of, for our job, a lot of really good talkers. Mm-hmm. But I think what you're describing is really a reflection of their leaders, right? LeBron, you come in the locker room after a bad loss or a big win. LeBron is pretty, by the time we get in there, there's not a lot of tension emanating from his locker. By the time we get to LeBron, and it's not it's hours and hours after the game, he is ready. He's able to throw water on whatever controversy or whatever, concern there might be. In terms of keeping things really, really level and playful in the locker room, LeBron is just different from anyone else I've been around in terms of being able to kind of orchestrate the mood of the room. And, I think having the veterans around him that he's had, I think that he and Dwight have had good chemistry. Obviously AD, Dudley, Rondo. There just is it's a group of guys that have just clicked and whose experiences in their careers kind of all are similar. And they all see some pieces of themselves in all these other dudes.
There's an Earth 2 scenario somewhere, I guess Earth 2 in this particular scenario, where they lose that Clippers game and then lose 7 of the next 12, and they're sitting, they're 5-8, and it's just where none of these things happen this way. And the start that they got off to this year, I think saved, put all of these things to bed, because all of us, the Dwight thing, nobody's going to make noise about not getting shots, not getting whatever. I'll do whatever you want because we're winning. We won 22 of 24 or whatever it is. I'm not saying a word. Nobody's doing it. Frank Vogel gets to settle in and really make, he made the eight. People, Andy, you wrote about this a lot when it happened. The AD, you're going to play a little bit of 5 even when you don't want to. He came in game 2 against Rudy Gobert when he moved him and started the second.
I think that was a huge moment for the season.
But like he gets to really settle in, and all the Jason Kidd stuff doesn't materialize, and some of it's a lot of it's by design. And we had, we were talking to Tanya the other day about some of this stuff, and she's like, she was saying like they made a big effort inside the building to put all of those things to bed and make sure they didn't become an issue. But if you lose, it's hard to do that. And getting off to this start that was so much better than everybody thought and gave them so much more wiggle room to be able to play the way they wanted to, give a lot of guys minutes, experiment with lineups, and keep everyone engaged was such a luxury that was unexpected. I mean, do you guys, we've been talking about this a lot, like neither one of you see anything happening that would at the very least keep them from getting to the final, short of weird injuries or something like that.
No, I mean, I thought Denver was really good in game 2, right? I mean, they seem to have some things figured out in terms of how to get Jokic engaged and get him more offensively effective. But I mean, no, I mean, it's with a 2-game cushion. I don't think there's really any way the Lakers are going to lose this series. So, I mean, I think you can pencil them into the finals.
Andy, I mean, I think Denver Andy wins a game or 2, but I don't think.
Look, Denver's a good team, and they've proven, you cannot ever count them out, and they've proven they won't give up. I mean, they're not a team that's going to get down on themselves. That being said, I was listening to Zach Lowe's podcast today. He had Howard Beck on. I thought Zach summarized it really well. The way LeBron is playing right now and the way he's got this team locked in, it's just impossible to imagine them losing 4 out of 5 games.
Right.
Like, short of something,
anybody.
Right. Short of something weird happening. It's just impossible to picture. I mean, Denver, to be totally honest, assuming the Lakers just don't start looking way, way ahead of them, Denver's not good enough to do that. Like, I still think Denver could win a game. I think they could win 2 games. But just the idea of 4 out of 5, I can't picture it. I just can't. They're not good enough.
Well, the way LeBron's playing and the way AD is playing, like it's Nikola Jokic is a top 10 player in the NBA. I mean, Jimmy Butler is certainly playing like a top 10 player in the NBA. Jason Tatum is a top 10 player right now, the way he's playing in the league.
You know what's great, by the way, is all of us do this. We'll name like 30 players who are top 10
okay, I consider top 10 to me is not a number, it's a caliber. Because I don't think there's necessarily the difference on any given night between Jimmy Butler and Jason Tatum might not be that. I consider it's a caliber. There's a top 5 guy, kind of a top 10 guy, top 20 guy, and who is in that group from night to night changes.
I think if you're going to say that a guy is top 5, you have to account for your top 5.
I think that's fair. I think if you're going to trim it down to that 5,
you can't have 30 guys.
I hate ranking players.
Share my Kamenetzky brothers rankings.
I'm top 5.
Well, that's true.
Because even if you include my children, who are technically Kamenetzky brothers, and me and Andy, my dad only had a sister, Andy's dad too. I can't think of any other. We have a really small family. So,
are you guys have other siblings?
No.
Okay. There's not a Kamenetzky sister.
Oh, you think there's like some shunned Kamenetzky brothers that we wouldn't allow into our little show?
The idea, it's like, oh yeah, there's Chuck Kamenetzky,
right?
Or shunning us. Well, let's be clear, he could be shunning us. I mean, frankly, it's what I would do if I were the third Kamenetzky. But let's at least open for that possibility. But no, Brian's right. I mean, if you account for everybody living, that would be a Kamenetzky brother.
Still first team.
Yeah, we are absolutely first team. There's no question about that. Should we get to the game? Bill looks ready to get into the game.
All right. I'm ready for it.
Okay. Bill, as everybody knows, is a pun aficionado. As his Twitter bio reads, never bring a knife to a pun fight. And Bill is all about the puns, as you'll notice on Twitter, punny play on words. So with that in mind, I have a game that involves wordplay and puns, but not puns per se. I will give you guys clues to a word with P-U-N in it. and you have to guess the word.
This is like a Jeopardy category.
Yes, it's like a Jeopardy category. For example, another word for media talking heads.
Pundit.
And
Brian.
There you go. All right, that was just a warm up.
Right.
But anyway,
ring in somehow, or how does this?
Your name is your buzzer, so you just say Bill when you know it.
Okay.
And by the way, too, all the words will have pun in it, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will be pronounced pun. Just be aware of that. So
it appears in PUN. They'll be in order.
PUN. It will always have PUN. The letters will never be mixed up. So we begin.
About starting an Instagram account that just captured puns in nature, and it would be called Once Upon a Time. Thoughts? Like,
I would have workshopped that.
To begin, this genre of music was the backdrop of movie. Yes.
Punk.
Yes. There you go. One for Brian. It is punk. Number 2. After being abandoned by her family, this 80s sitcom title character, along with her dog.
Brian.
Was that?
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Bill said it first. Yes, Punky Brewster,
yes,
Soleil Moonfry.
That backstory is really actually much sadder than people remember.
Yes, I actually had to look it up too to make sure I was describing characters. I was like, Jesus,
it is brutal,
dark for an 80s sitcom.
Yes, it was.
In fairy tales, she famously had long golden hair.
Brian.
I think it was Brian barely in.
Rapunzel.
It is Rapunzel, 2-1 Brian. If you're somebody who always behaves as if there are no repercussions for your actions, that you will never be held accountable, you could be described as acting with Brian.
Bill Oram. I was trying to make a joke. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think Bill always behaves like that.
Bill, would you like a free pass?
I don't even remember the question at this point.
I will read it just for Bill. If you're somebody,
I actually do know the answer.
Well, it's too late now.
Oh,
if you're somebody who always behaves as if there are no repercussions for your actions, that you will never be held accountable, you could be described as acting with
impunity.
Yes, Bill, 2-2, because Brian had to be the funny guy. If you're giving someone at least decent odds of making something happen, even as the underdogs, you would say that they have Brian.
Puncher's chance.
Yes, Brian got it. A puncher's chance.
This is a fun game. Good job, Andy.
Thank you. It's this is the type of treatment that involves little needles being stuck all over your butt. Brian got it.
No, he did not. Not the second time.
I think he actually did. I hate to say I'm not playing. It is acupuncture. I promise you, I'm not playing favorites. I think he actually got it.
Don't you think, Bill, if you were playing favorites, you'd be winning?
I don't know. I'm not one of the 5 living Kamenetzky.
When your records have been cleaned up by the government because a judge or court Bill
expunged.
Yes, expunged.
Nice.
4-3. 4-3. This is a good game. This is a good game.
How many do you have? I kind of want to keep. Normally, I'm like, I ask how many do you have in like a really negative way, but this one I actually kind of want to keep going.
I'll go through all of them. Apologists for our president's personality and temper often say that he's not a bully or looking for fights. He's just one of these. It's part of his strategy. Could also be a strategy for a boxer.
Bill.
Go ahead.
A counterpuncher?
Yes, Bill got it. 4-4. This is a tight one.
Oh, well done, Bill.
This Marvel character has been portrayed in film by both Dolph Lundgren and Brian.
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 Punisher.
Brian. Yes, the Punisher, also portrayed by Thomas Jane. Another is a word for something that is small or weak.
Bill.
Brian.
Bill. No, Bill got it.
No.
Brian. No, Bill did get it. Bill. That's not Bill. That is not Bill's problem. That is not Bill's problem. He got it. So 5-5. Ooh. This could refer to an item made from fabric while at home, or also the simple, unpretentious, quaint lifestyle, often referencing small town characters or small town life. An item made from a fabric of sorts, specifically while at home.
Brian.
Bill got it. Bill got it.
Homespun.
Homespun. There you go.
Damn it.
Okay, a couple more.
I actually do think Bill got that one.
He did get it. 2 more.
Oh,
In football, when you get
Bill.
10 yards,
Ryan.
Bill got it. Bill did get it. Punt. Yes, after you get 10 yards after 3 downs. Okay. This is the last one. Bill is up 7-5, but as luck would have it, just totally random, the last one is worth 3 points. So Brian has the opportunity to still win the thing. When dealing with capital or lowercase letters, we are dealing with
Bill.
Bill got it. Go for it.
I feel
What
like
is it, Bill?
punctuation.
It is punctuation. Bill with the 8-5 victory in the.
Hold on. That's a 10-5 victory.
He's right.
No. Oh yeah, you're right.
Worth
Okay,
3.
my apologies.
It's not
I
just
forgot.
worth 3 for me. It's worth 3 for him too.
That is true. I forgot. I mean, Bill
I'm
didn't
going to
even
be
need the
gracious
point.
to my loss.
Okay, Bill got it. There you go. So 10-5, doubling up Brian in the sort of pun game. Congratulations.
I was really afraid that whatever this game was going to be humiliating for me, but
Ouch. Oh my God. Look at this.
This is insulting.
Look
This
at
is
this.
insulting.
Jesus.
The writer wins. What does the Lakers guy think I do for a living, for God's sakes? Screw you, Lakers guy.
Oh my God. That is
deeply insulting.
Lakers guy, I'm going to send you an autographed copy of my book.
Oh, let's play a game of who's written more books, me or Bill. I've written half a book because Andy wrote the other half. How many have you written?
I wrote the.
Feels like you.
You know, Lakers writer, Lakers guy. This show is doing just fine. It will do just fine with one less viewer. You know, I mean,
Mom, I told you less
as
off.
soon as we figure out how to block people, you're out.
But I will spend time Googling after this show is over. Well done, Bill. That was really good.
Very fun.
Yeah.
Very fun, guys.
That was a fun game. I wasn't. I thought it could be good, but I was a little bit unsure. But I'm very happy with that one. I thought that was a really fun
I
one.
think when you look back on it, there's a reason that Jeopardy has run with that kind of category for decades.
That's true.
I mean, it's
That is
very,
true.
very successful. It's a crowd pleaser.
Yes,
I
and it
feel like
was.
I won on the strength of the hardest to get clues. I thought homespun and
That was.
Homespun, I think we both kind of figured it out at the same time. But you were just quicker. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
You're
also
a
had
younger
to,
man, Bill. Your brain works just a little bit faster.
I also had to look up the definition of homespun just to remember if I actually knew what it meant. And it turned out I did, but I wasn't 100% sure. It's not a word that
I was thinking hometown
it's used that
buffet.
often.
That's different. Oh,
right,
by
Bill.
the way, did you guys see Sizzler filed for bankruptcy today?
How
Like,
are
Sizzler's
any
gone.
buffets ever going to be open ever again?
I
You know
was just,
what?
I mean, but like Sizzler in particular, I loved Sizzler.
Sizzler was so good when you were in college. Sizzler was phenomenal for
I have
college.
so many fond memories of the Sizzler.
Well, who were we talking about? Was it Goon that we were talking about this with from the bubble? Like Kyle Goon and all the other NBA scribes down in the bubble are among the few people in this country who are still engaging in buffets. It's like buffets are not really prevalent at this stage of our lives right now in America.
You know what? I was in eastern Idaho in May and accidentally went to a pizza buffet, and it was horrifying. And it was still in existence.
We can all agree pizza buffet is the worst kind of buffet.
We went because the teenager we were with likes their Oreo pizza, their Oreo dessert pizza. But like you go in and like for the salad bar and everything, they still had like they had the little papers that you're supposed to use on tongs. Like that was their defense against the virus. And I get in line behind a guy.
Let me tell you, when I had my 9th slice, I felt terrible.
This guy is not only not using the papers, but he's reaching over the pizza I want.
Oh,
I was done.
come on, man.
It's like that episode of Seinfeld when like the edge of his belt accidentally hits part of the toilet and he just tosses the belt.
I mean, that's Bill. That's bad. That's bad buffet etiquette at any time, but certainly during a pandemic, it's even worse.
Oof.
I will say, like, they don't call it all you should eat. It's all you can eat. And that is a challenge.
I do always take it as a personal challenge, and it is, but it's interesting to see the people who have scouted it out, or who like know the lay of the land and like know where to run immediately when they first get in, or when something comes out, they're like, oh, the sticky buns are out, beeline, and they come back with a whole tray.
No, I mean, I love all those. I loved Soup Plantation when that was a thing. I loved Sizzler. Like when I first moved out here like 20 something years ago, like that was a place that I went because you could eat a lot of food for not that much money at the Sizzler. Particularly if you were willing just to do like all the salad bar stuff and the dessert. They have Jell-O. Like Sizzler is one of the last remaining places where you could get Jell-O at a place. I enjoy myself some of that. Like Chuck E. Cheese, they're still open. Yeah, Chuck E. Cheese still open. I think so.
It's more just the buffets. I just feel like you're going to have, if you were a restaurant that was anchored in buffets, you're going to have to find different ways to improvise. Like you're just going to have to find different ways to adapt. Like we've a few times, my wife and my daughter and I, we've gone to this all-inclusive in Mexico. That's fantastic. And my daughter was really bummed out about not being able to go this year. And she kept talking about how she wanted to go back and she was so excited to do the buffets. And I'm like, I don't know when they're going to have that again. Like, I'm not sure exactly when buffets, like the hotel might open up at some point, but I wonder when they're actually going to be doing buffets, if at all. Like, I think it's going to be a while before that's commonplace, if at all.
All right, the omelet bar, huh?
Yeah. Well, the omelet bar, maybe. Omelet bar could work because that's really just a one-on-one relationship between you and your egg cooker. Like it's not like you don't pick out omelets through the bar. Exactly. That sort of thing. Bill, you got anything to promote besides the piece that we talked about?
No, I mean, just been covering these playoffs. My baby's awake for some reason here at 11:15, so sign off.
But you probably should go attend.
It's been a heck of a playoff journey and a great run for the Lakers, and it's been a pleasure to cover. And so I've been having a lot of fun with it, and hope people are enjoying reading it.
He is the athletic Bill Oram. He
famously so.
Yes. Well, I mean, you could have written that. I mean, there is enough room. You got another about half a box to go there that you could have filled up. Thanks so much, man, for giving us the time, running over a little bit. Tomorrow night, Matt Moore. We're going real heavy on basketball, obviously for obvious reasons this week. Matt Moore from the Action Network. Jovan Buha, we're going to do The Athletic versus The Athletic. Wednesday, we'll just, we'll let you know if he does better than you. Bill, it's possible.
I mean, play the pun game with the exact same clues. Brian can ring in time.
I will beat him by many points. And then Thursday, Dragonfly Jones. It's going to be a fun week.
Yeah, it's going to be a really cool week.
Thanks for listening. Again, reminder, you can always catch the podcast by subscribing to the Late Night Happy Hour over at Apple or wherever you get your finest podcasts. And we will see everybody tomorrow night. Matt Moore from the Action Network talking basketball.